Hello, everyone. Michael Jordan fans are the best. And today we have here NMB Sports. Nick, how are you today?
Doing good.
Awesome. We were supposed to have Robin here today, Sports and Fitness Rants, but he had something last minute come up. Hoop God, I see you're in here as well. If you'd like to hop in, then you're welcome to. Just let me know and we'll do it. Um, but today we're going to be talking about has the AAU destroyed the modern NBA. So, what do you think is the effect of the AAU on the modern NBA as it stands right now?
Yeah, well, there's obviously like a lot I want to cover and go over, but again, America is still the mecca of basketball as it stands currently, and probably will be until way after our lifetimes, right? So things like AAU, these kind of these leagues of young men and women who essentially it's their some of their most formidable years that they're learning the game, their ethics, all these kinds of things, right? AAU really is one of the building blocks or foundations for basketball as we think of it, right? So, in terms of its effect, there's obviously I want to talk about its effect, but in terms of its importance, right? Like, it's big, it's huge. It shouldn't be understated, and I think this is one of those things I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, and I it's very nuanced and contextual, and can possibly be anecdotal at times. So it's kind of hard to say, look at this study or this stat, and this proves what I'm talking about, right? So I was thinking about doing a video on this, but I thought maybe the best way would just to be sort of like how we're doing and talking about it, because there's a lot of points I want to bring up, but this is kind of one of those things where uh it's very opinionated, right, about what's changed that's good and bad and how much of an effect it has. And I have plenty of things I want to talk about, but in terms of its importance, like it's probably much more than, as I was thinking about this topic, it's much more than probably people think, right? I mean, if you think high school basketball is fundamental and the college years are fundamental for a player, then that goes doubly for things like the AAU, or those formidable years, junior high, maybe through high school a little bit as well. I think are very formidable for how kids view and play the game, right? So it's definitely had an effect. We can kind of go point by point, but its importance is massive.
Yeah, for me with the AAU, I don't think it's the AAU in itself because the AAU has been around for 150 years. I think it's the culture of the AAU, what it's become. Because the AAU, you've had guys like Dr. J, I believe, or not Dr. J, guys in the late '80s, had famous all time great AAU teams. I had a list I was looking at earlier. It's just escaping my mind. But the AAU itself has been around since the 1880s. So I don't think it's the AAU. I think the AAU has a great purpose within American youth sports. However, I think the culture of what the AAU has become has changed over time because a lot of these teams, the 80s and 90s teams that had, some of the most famous NBA players ever on them, it's just the culture of the NBA and the AAU, I believe, has changed to that quote unquote skilled player. And the AAU seems to more showcase individual talents versus these older school guys per se that played, in my opinion, what I see out of it, better team basketball. They're not going around and like one of my favorite guys that I think is like the prototype of what the AAU stands for today is the Julian Newman kid,
Yeah.
where he's a tiny kid. His dad coaches the team, and all they're trying to do is sell him to make the league or a college team. And he does all this nonsense. He's doing all this crazy dribbling. Like I saw a recent short with him on it, and they said the cameraman locked you up for some one of the comments, and I thought it was hilarious. But I think he's one of those guys that go and just he's the epitome of AAU basketball as it is today. Obviously, there's a lot of great players that still come out of it. I'm not saying that it's worthless, but I think it starts there, like what you're saying. And the Julian Newmans of the world, I think, is kind of the bad side of it, to show what it really is for the most part out of, some of the best natural basketball talents in youth sports.
Yeah, and to kind of touch on what you were talking about there is kind of the genesis of what made me start this thinking about this topic was um to back up before the AAU, right? So I'm mid 30s, we're roughly around the same age, right? And maybe you noticed this or not, but I remember one of the big cultural shifts in sports kind of during my time when I was coming up versus what I saw when I was sort of leaving high school, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I remember in my time, like growing up, right, it was play any and every sport that you can 24/7, dabble in this, dabble in that, try, play two sports, three sports, right? Think about a guy like I can't remember if it's Mark Price or Danny Ainge, but he was three-time All-State in three sports, right? Um, that was kind of what it used to be, right? And I remember when I was leaving high school, and this was really big with like 7-on-7 football, right? Is kids were becoming very specialized, and they were just focusing on the new trend was to focus on one thing, one sport, and you play it 365, right? That was a big cultural shift. If I remember correctly, that's how I feel anyways. That happened sort of when I was growing up versus what I saw when I was leaving. That was a huge cultural shift. And I think that is sort of the beginning of this AAU topic that we're having right now is that uh we see these guys who just play basketball now 365, and this goes into AAU and what you were talking about with the scorer, right? These kids are like, it's not necessarily that it's better or worse, it's different. These kids are getting a bag now, or that's what they're focused on. That's what they're practicing, all the time is the step back and the hezzy and all the new moves we've seen come about, right? That bend the rules or are creative. And I think that the genesis of this thing is moving to this very specialized guys are now becoming in basketball they're becoming very specialized in a way. Now good or bad, I'm not sure, but with that, and I'll try to wrap it up here. With that came the emphasis of the athlete over the player, right? The guy who knows the game in and out. And Rex agreed with me. We talked about this on one of the streams, right? In that shift came the we want guys who know the game inside and out, and if they're an athlete, that's a bonus. And it turned into this thing of we just want the most raw talent we can get, and then we'll try to develop a move or two later on, correct? And I think with this sort of specialized, we're just focusing on one sport here. I think that natural selection kind of happens. Again, doesn't necessarily make it better or worse. It's just sort of a different style and flavor of the game that has gone on. And then I think that's now where we start with how is the AAU now influencing the game that we've seen, we've debated, we're done with the 90s, right? The more strategic, methodical game strategy, the ball moves around versus let's give it to a guy or two, let them create, and we'll play off of that, right? So I think, in my opinion, right, this is where this kind of all starts to what we're seeing now. And then there's other things we could talk about, but that's kind of my genesis story, in my opinion, of how things have changed and where it came from.
I got a question for you because Roland Curtis made a great point. It is Friday night. This is probably the most saturated time, for internet basketball. Do you mind if I drop the link to if anyone wants to join us just for
Yeah,
the
100%. Yeah,
all
absolutely. I
right.
think this is one of those topics where I don't even think it's like much of a debate, right? Or it's more just like what do people see? That's what I see, right? That's kind of the evolution I've seen, and then we can sort of get into the ripple effects of what's happened since then.
Yeah, and it is niche in respect to, people want to hear stuff about the what's going on in the NBA today or the GOAT debate or whatever. There's a lot of things. This is more of a niche topic, but I think it's fun to talk about either way. But to your point, excuse me. Yeah, with the AAU. So my cousin was a pretty good baseball player, and he was a multi-sport athlete. And then he went, and then eventually near the end of his high school, all he did was play baseball. But at first, he played basketball, um, and then he also did that as well. The baseball. I don't know if he played another sport off the top of my head, but the point of it is that I know he started transitioning for that. A lot of the other people I knew going through high school, they were multi-sport athletes, like you're saying. I didn't know anybody particularly that only did one sport. Even the best football players or basketball players, all of this sort of stuff, whatever sport it was, the baseball players, they all went and they did other sports. So and I agree. I think it was really around the time when we were growing up that it started making that transition outside of the real prospects, the real tryhards per se. But it seems to be more of a common thing nowadays. At least that's my idea behind it. Is that something and I'm getting that's at what you're saying is that that's what you see as well. Um, I mean, and I know you said you coach youth sports. Is that something that a lot of the kids did that you coach? They just did it all year long, whether basketball or.
Oh yeah, definitely. So the other kind of big thing of this is obviously with we're talking about young players is obviously parents play a big role, but parents have always been an issue in sports, right? So I don't really think it's necessarily the parents per se, but yes, parents when they would bring me their kids or we would be practicing, um, it's only really like in grade school, like fifth through third, fourth, fifth grade that kids I remember having a couple kids who had baseball as well that they kind of went back and forth between. But once you get to the junior high level, everyone is diehard into their sport 24/7. Like everyone is very specialized. They have picked one thing, and that's the thing that they do, right? And in my opinion, this sort of culture has bled over to the game in many ways in terms of right. I was reading some articles from like Rasheed Wallace and Baron Davis, and Rasheed kind of mentions how these kids come in, right? And so AAU is blown up. There's always been politics. I played on an AAU team for a very short while, and it was so political. And it could be argued that me as well as other players were much better than some other guys who played a lot, but their parents put in a lot of time and effort and money into the team, right? And so that kind of happens. So there's that. There has always been politics in AAU, right? Uh, but sports is these sports. I also feel like in our lifetime, monetarily wise, have blown up, right?
Yeah.
And so with that money and with this sort of specialized thinking, right? I think this is where people get the thought that kids are entitled, and kids come in as athletes and they're just thinking I'm just going to attack the rim until I get to the NBA, or I'm just going to shoot threes until I get to the NBA, right? I think Baron Davis mentions like there's thousands of AAU teams in LA alone. How good can the product be if there's 1,000 AAU teams in LA? Correct. And that's what I mean. And it kind of bled over to Rasheed saying everything is so specialized now. Kids just do one thing and they're just trying to be good at one thing. It's like that culture has almost bled over into the game. And again, you get the rare gems that like Luka and these guys who can do anything and they pick things up and they learn it so fast and they can be a one-on-one player, but not everybody's like that, right? So a lot of these kids don't know how to do other things, you could say, and argue, and that's where we kind of get into this. The 90s used to be very team oriented and now it's very superstar driven. You're trying to find one of these gems and just play off of that, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, I think this specialized culture is what has bled over into how people play and the entitlement, because we're talking about now a lot of money. Athletes are playing like, and this is the last topic, and I'll wrap it up and let you say something. But this bleeds into all of that, then crosses over into this. When it comes to development, kids developing things, right? When money and politics begins to enter into youth sports, uh, it quickly the entertainment factor becomes the thing. And if you can get a team of athletes as kids, they can beat more than likely a team of good basketball players, but who aren't. They just haven't matured yet in these junior high school years, right? So then there becomes this emphasis on the athlete, but no one's really playing good ball anymore when they get to higher levels, correct? And that's, I think, what a lot of the complaint is. And that's the sad thing, is like there's so much good talent that maybe has gotten looked over that are good basketball players, but they get outshined by these athletes at a young age, and it's really hard to kind of catch up or close that gap after, now they're looking over here at the athlete, not necessarily the guy over here who has, he's got the bag, maybe doesn't blow you away with the metrics or whatever, but he knows the game, he's a good player, but he's never going to get looked at, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that kills me about youth sports. Not even just AAU, even I won't get into particulars, but my kids played at the YMCA and their little leagues or whatever, and I effing hate a lot of these parents because they pretend like it's the world championships. They're yelling at each other. There's these beefs. It's like, dog, let your kids have fun and stop telling them to go run into each other, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like. And, it really frustrates me seeing that stuff. And me being a coach, I couldn't do it. It would be great to go and coach my kids or whatever, but I could not deal with that ultra competitive, vicarious competition that these parents have with their kids. It's like, dog, your kid is 7 years old. Chill out, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, again, like they go and they're telling the rough other kids up and, oh, it's cool. And then, oh, why didn't the ref call that? It was a bad call. Dog, he's doing it for free for one, at the
Yeah.
Y at least, you know what I mean? He's volunteering, or at least he works at the place. Chill out, man. You know what I mean? And I just, that's one thing that kills me about youth sports as a parent, because I myself am competitive, but to see these parents, in my opinion, it makes these kids losers in total. My mom coached me as a kid within basketball, and you always say you want to try and win, but you don't go and tell people to do dirty things. You know what I'm saying? Or ignore the sportsmanship of the game just to come out over somebody. And that's something that I've seen as a father now in multiple leagues, where they're more focused, a lot of these coaches too, on just playing their son and or just winning this, sometimes not even score basketball game, depending on how young they are. And it just kills me it really just gets me angry. You know what I'm saying? It kills me with that. And for example, again, to bring this kid up, or this young guy, the Julian Newman, he's like 5'5". He can do all these fancy in the pocket moves, but he was never going to make the league. For one, he's too short and he's not that damn good. But they tried to sell him. They literally had a social media show about him because he was the next big thing. He wasn't. He was a short kid who got all this attention by his father. His sister's not that good either. She's better than him. But to the point of it is that, like, that dad, in my opinion, just made him a little effing a-hole. Like, I want to curse so bad because I hate these parents, what they do to these kids, making them think that this is life, this game, when you're 10 years old.
Yeah.
Like, it really angers me. Like, it kills me. Why don't you teach them about character? You know what I'm saying? Why don't you, character is not playing more because your dad's the coach. Character is not more about getting an edge over some kid in this effing basketball game. Character is about doing the right thing and trying to improve yourself the right way. And yeah, and I'll stop it at that, because I'll just keep rambling, because this stuff really annoys me, how parents influence their kids, in my opinion, in a very negative light.
Yeah, parents are a big X factor. Like when you have a team or something, like a good group of parents or a bad group of parents can just make or break an experience for a kid. I think the main thing that parents don't do, in my opinion, right, like you kind of mentioned, is that they need to understand, like, this is a process, right? My job as a coach or an instructor is, when the season starts and then the season ends, what does that difference look like? Is your kid dribbling better? Is he passing better? Is he moving better? Is he shooting better? Is he smarter? Is he running plays, right? That's like, they have to understand, like, this is a process. And I think a lot of parents want they want that instant gratification. Like you're saying, they're kind of living through their kids in a way, and with that comes this like instant gratification mindset of, they want their kid to hit the game winning shot, they want their kid to score 30 points, they want their kid to, make a big block or cross a kid up, right? Instead of, you're going to have to teach them how to do a crossover properly first, right? And you need to teach him how to run a proper pick and roll if you want him to drop 30, that kind of thing, right? So I definitely agree with the whole parental aspect. They are the environment of the team, whether you like it or not as a coach, especially in younger kids, right? Like, they're going to be around, they are there, like, you're so they can make or break a team, right? And like growing up, I kind of mentioned my dad coached me, but he says all the time, like, he got so lucky with the group of kids that I ended up playing with, that all the parents were just like good parents. Like, of course, they're there to cheer, but like, they get what my dad is trying to do and teaching us, and understanding that, one of the first things I tell kids and the parents, when I come to a new group of kids, I grab the parents and the kids, and the first thing I tell them is, we are only working out an hour a week or 2 hours a week or whatever it is, right? If you want to get better, you got to come home, do your homework, get that done, and then you're in the backyard for the next hour or two, working on your left hand, working on your shot, working on this or that, right? So that's one thing I tell them, because then that kind of puts the onus on the parents, right? That this isn't just me. I'm here to show, but you guys are there to grow, right? So that's kind of what I tell them. Is Rex
Yeah.
still cycling? The guy asked.
Yeah, so Rex, he's in his cycling season, and I talked to him earlier this week. I asked him if he wanted to come. He said he wasn't interested. Uh, I don't know if he's quitting, but I feel like he's taking a break. He's done that before. He's a massive enthusiast of basketball, obviously. So, and I felt bad because one of the recent shows, and then after this incident, I started changing it up just for the purpose of trying to avoid these incidents. One guy was calling him names, and I should have just preemptively stopped that, but I
Yeah.
didn't. And he kept calling him names and stuff like that. And nobody wants to hear that. I was in control, and I've talked. I believe I talked to Rex about it in private, but um, I felt bad about it in hindsight, or I feel bad about it in hindsight. And then I've changed up about how callers go, because before I would just let them keep talking. Now it's, do you have a question for somebody or the panel? And
Yeah.
and then I mute you after, because I've come to find that it just evolves into an argument, or they just want to keep talking. If, for one, it doesn't let other callers come on as fast. Two, it devolves if somebody doesn't like somebody in a name calling and some weird thing like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would like Rex to come back.
Come on back, Rex.
Yeah, but and I don't know. I don't want to speak for him. I don't know what's going on, but he hasn't told me he quit. But he hasn't come recently, so maybe he just wants to take a break, and he's doing his cycling thing. So I think he'll be back in the future, but he hasn't been here recently, and he's got his own stuff going on. So, but yeah, Basketball Goat says Politicus Rex knows a lot about the game. I'm always interested in hearing his takes and thoughts. Yeah, absolutely. He's a walking encyclopedia, and I consider him a friend, and I think he's value added to the channel. And
100%. I think he's a great like dichotomy to our points.
Absolutely. He's always got something to expand on.
Yeah.
I've learned so much about basketball from Rex, and but hopefully he comes back on soon. But I think he's just doing a cycling thing, or trying to, and amongst other things. And I feel bad about that one thing with the call. So that might have something to do with it. I don't know. But outside of that, I think he'll be back sometime. But I get the vibes that he just trying to step away for a little bit, which is fine. Um, but yeah, you're talking about the coaches or with you bringing them in and the parents not understanding that it's a process. And I totally agree. It's a process. You're a little kid. Some kids learn, like for me personally, and I feel like I'm a pretty smart guy in total. But as a kid, if I didn't pick it up right away, it took me a while to get it. Um, and I mean, maybe that's the same as an adult, but I feel like I pick things up easier as I've gotten older. Where if I need to learn, but I feel like as a kid, I just didn't have the patience. Um, but to the point of that is that sorry, I was reading the comments, but the the what I'm getting at is that particularly the coaches of kids, I think a lot of them aren't the right people to do it because they just hyper focus on their kids. They swarm the team, especially if they try to just be an assistant coach. And I get just trying to have somebody help and stuff like that. But a lot of them just hyper focus on their kid and then they mob up like you're talking with the politics with the head coach, or if it's AAU, the people that are bought the or finance the team, they mob up with them and rub shoulders. And it's like, for me, I'm not that guy as an adult. I don't go and just kiss your butt just because I know I'm going to get something out of you. Like if I like you, I'll talk to you or whatever, but I'm definitely not in that situation going to fake a friendship with you just so my kid can play more. Um, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's just me.
Yeah, and one of the best stories or anecdotes I have of that, just one of my experiences. Like the first time I ever coached, my kid was like first, second grade, and we went to the Y. No intentions of coaching, right? But they had enough kids for an extra team, and so I was like, hell yeah, like I'll do it. I'd love to do it. So I ended up coaching, right, and I did it for 2 years. And so that first year, like one of our first games, we just got slaughtered by like 25, right? Remember, I have the second group, like the obvious second group of kids, right?
Yeah.
There was the kids that who always been there, and this year we had enough for an extra, like parents like me who brought their kid. There happened to be enough extra, so I kind of, like we literally were the island of misfit toys, and like we kind of took that persona on like in a good way. But the first game we first second game we just get slaughtered, like crushed by 20-25 points, right, against this team. You knew they'd been playing together for a while. They had plays. They had second graders running out to the corner off picks and screens and literally hitting corner threes, right? Like it was just a bloodbath. And the next year we come back and it's like towards the end of the year, and I think we lost by like a last second shot or something, right? And I mean the kids were ecstatic. The parents loved it, like because it just shows, right? Like if you were a part of those kind of toxic parents, they would just say, "Man, you still lost. Like what's going on? You don't know what you're doing." But if you were to look at the process, right? Like in 2 years, essentially, I'd gotten those kids up to speed to where like a team that had probably been together for a while, they probably practice 3 times a week, right? Uh, and so yeah, and so it's just one of those things where, but if you take a step back and you look at it, right, like that's a lot of gap we just closed, right? And the parents were sending me emails afterwards, like the kids think they're Michael Jordan now. These kids think they're so good. And what's funny is they lost both games, but the kids know, the parents know, they see it, right? Like you can't complain if you bring the island of misfit toys and you bring them up to the best team literally that was like kind of in our area for a while, and you lose by a bucket at the end. Like that's pretty impressive. Like that's definitely progress and something to be proud of, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like for and I'm not, this is a general statement. As I said before, I don't know if you did this. I'm just saying in my experience with the fathers of children on teams, like I was saying before, it seems like they hyper focus on them. What I'm getting at with that though is that I think the best sort of coach, now the realism is that those are the guys that will coach, and especially when it's volunteer. It's some dad or mom sometimes that has signed their kid up, and it's at a just a general rec league, and nobody wants to volunteer to be a coach. So eventually, it's somebody's parent. So I get that aspect of it. And I'm not, and I myself would find myself guilty of focusing on my kid more. I know I would. And that's another reason why I don't want to do it, is because I know, for one, I'd be, in my opinion, way too hard on these kids. And then two, I feel like I couldn't balance with my kid, how I'd want to coach it. But I know that about myself. But I think the best coaches are coaches, and I've had a coach, a baseball coach, uh, when I was a kid who did this. Now, granted, he rubbed shoulders with parents of kids and let them be assistant coaches, but at the same time, he was just a volunteer. He didn't have a kid in the game, and actually had a soccer coach like that too. They just volunteered to help kids out, and I think those are the best type of coaches to have, because they don't have, whatever, a piece in the game. I can't think of the term right now, but just they don't have a stock in it.
Right.
They're just trying to do good for the community. So for me, that's the prime sort of coach you want to have. But ultimately, I think it all gets corrupted. To bring it back to AAU specifically, though, and the NBA players of today, like you're talking about, I think it just gets so diluted with money and entertainment. And again, like the Julian the Julian Newman kid,
He
I
was
think it's
YouTube. He was YouTube popular, right? Like he looked cool, right? I get it, right? Like it's this, like we kind of talk about this flash, but what's the substance, right?
mhm.
Can you hit an 18-foot turnaround or not? And it's like no, and it's like okay, well, why don't you start there?
But when he was 12 years old, he got famous for running his mouth at kids.
I
And he,
remember, yeah, I remember.
not to be I don't know if this is discrimination, but not to be a heightist, but him and his dad are tiny little effing shrimps that, like, they
Yeah,
have these Napoleon complexes, in my opinion. Oh, I just got to be bigger than everybody. I'm going to run my mouth. I'm going to be bigger by my voice. And I know you're not a shrimp, and I just know a lot of short guys that just live by their lip, and it's like, dog, like, if anyone ever checked you, you'd get crushed in a heartbeat. But most of society won't do that, especially as adults, unless you're doing some craziness. But just so the point of it is that to me, that was the wrong way to go about it. And he's an extreme example, but a lot of these AAU organizations, I have an idea that there's similar personalities involved with it. Especially with these NBA players that are involved with these AAU teams as well. Um, Man, I can only imagine how they all effing dance around each other. You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah.
in respect to the politics. It's got to be so cringy, man. Like, I don't know. Anyway, but what I'm getting at with a lot of these modern NBA players, um, I don't know the percentage of it, but I would guarantee that a majority of them have played on some AAU team growing up, because, like you said, it's the marketability, the entertainment. That's a way to get them out and then get further experience outside of their high school or whatever local league that they have. It expands it. So it's funny. I feel like a lot of AAU, to respect to the title and the idea of this stream, is that I think AAU has AAU kids have become the modern NBA, and the respect of the skill players and the hovering parents that just say you need to be the best at whatever. You're a guard, you need to whatever be like Kyrie Irving, um, as an example. But and as the poorest example, I keep bringing this guy up. I hope he knows
No,
my
he's a perfect like snapshot of kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, that to me, and no ill will for him in his future. I just think that he was disserviced as a child, And I personally, as a father and just as a man, found that his father had low character and respect of teaching him morals and discipline, because this, in respect to the entire person. If you go and you want to say that, oh, he put the work in basketball, sure, but his dad must have had an idea that I think, I don't know how tall he is. I think he's like 5'5" or 5'7", Julian Newman. That, it's a rare air to be in the NBA at that height. Um, and he
Yeah,
and
there's maybe like 10 or 15 guys, right, who have been good or decent at like 5'7" and below, so yeah, you're talking about like literally 1 in a billion.
yeah, and to the amount of time and effort and salesmanship that he did for his kid, not to even get a legitimate college basketball offer. You know what I mean? Now he's just in my opinion, I just think he was, that he's kind of a jerk, the kid at this point, Julian Newman. And I saw he played in some sort of creator league. Uh, and I thought it was hilarious because he was just getting backed down by, and I don't know the guy, the other YouTuber, but I saw one of these matchups because I've heard of Julian Newman, just because I love to hate Julian Newman kind of thing. And
Yeah.
again, I don't know him personally, but I really hated his
His
all
yeah,
five
his
content.
persona is to be edgy and combative, right? So like that's kind of the expected feeling you're gonna get from people.
But yeah, he just got smoke checked. It was, in this thing by a big fat guy. I don't know if he ever played basketball, in respect to the amount of time that was put in for Julian Newman in his life. Uh,
Yeah.
he just backed
Yeah,
him
for
down and
sure.
did hook shots, and he was a foot taller than him. So it was, I would have done the same thing against him. And, I'm not saying I could beat Julian Newman, but he's so tiny, if he reaches for me, I just, you can, I don't know. I'm not saying that I'm not going to try and break down the science to it, but you can feel people. And if you're balanced, when somebody's trying to reach for you, if you're so much bigger than them, you turn into it and you do a layup or hook shot, whatever. It's not rocket science in a one-on-one game.
Yeah, I mean, like Rex says, all things being equal, right? The taller guy probably wins. So, and just to kind of like bring it all back to the AAU thing too, and what really made me want to talk about this, remember you asked me for topics, and I said I was kind of interested to talk about what LeBron and Reddick talked about in terms of the low IQ thing. And this
Yeah.
kind of plays into that, right? And sort of reading some things from Baron Davis and Rasheed Wallace, like I had mentioned, and KG as well, has been very critical of the current modern day AAU, right? These kids come in, sort of expecting, right, to drop 25 or 30, like I was kind of mentioning, right? They get this bag, or they're more skilled, right, as they say today. And they kind of come in expecting to drop 25 to 30, and they're very good at like one or two things, like you said. And kind of one thing Rasheed said, he's like, to be honest with you, man, most of y'all aren't going to make it to the NBA, and those of you who do aren't going to be on the floor because you can drop 25. You'll be on the floor because you can play defense and rebound or something like that. That's what'll keep you on the floor, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of ties into the low IQ comments from, I believe it was like Reddick, right? Reddick said essentially he couldn't even flip a play. People wouldn't know where to get on the floor, right?
Well, they both did. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a perfect example of what has happened, like from the 90s, what we talked about, the evolution of focusing on just one thing, trying to get the best athletes. Again, the best athletes as kids, if you can get them in high school and junior high, will beat the more fundamentally sound team 9 times out of 10, more than likely, right? Because they're kids. And we're talking about, those are times when like big steps and differences are happening between certain kids who in one summer they'll grow 5 inches, right? Something like that. And you have some kids who are just so much more athletically gifted, and this other kid over here is just trying to work on his left hand, right? And so you get these kids coming in and they just know how to run up and down the floor, and they're just trying to shoot step backs, and then all of a sudden someone will say, let's just switch the play. I want to catch it, right? Go into my right or something. And everyone's like a deer in the headlights. And that's a perfect, I couldn't imagine doing that in high school. If we were going to run out of bounce play and they just said, well, just flip it. Or we would have obviously plays already known, and if we saw something, we as the players would call it out, and everyone would know where to go, right? Like I couldn't imagine in the NBA this kind of thing happening. That's mind-boggling. Like it's kind of sad, unfortunately, to hear, right? And that I think is the perfect timeline that we're talking about, where things become so specialized. Kids just want to come in, run up and down the floor, get a bag, be skilled. And then all of a sudden you got to do something else. And everyone has no idea how to do the most basic fundamental shifts or rotations, or, hey, they're running a 2-3. Someone's got to run along the baseline. Let's run a point. Or they're running man. We're doing the pick and roll, or we're doing a triangle, or we're doing a motion, right? Like no one, I feel like nobody really does that anymore. It's just watch LeBron or Luca or what have you, just, and Kyrie or whatever, just do what they do, and we'll try to float around the 3-point line or get a rebound, right? And that's kind of where it's gotten to.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I watched most of the second episode. I felt it was less entertaining, although I thought that they said some funny stuff. But to the point of bringing that up, I want to reel it back in too for a second. But I just want to get this out. Is that show is essentially just explaining NBA lingo for basic plays in respect to, and they're trying to act like it's monumental to say that whatever a high screen and roll is called thumbs up or thumbs down, or an inverted pick and roll. I've never, whatever, they're in the NBA, I guess they describe it as that, but a pick and roll is a pick and roll. It doesn't matter if it's a guard doing it for a big or the vice versa. They're like, I don't know, that stuff just drives me crazy. But to your point with the, essentially, I'll just say it as it is, these guys that are dumb, they can't flip a play in their head. It's because what you're saying is that it seems like they just focus on these individual skills. They're not playing team basketball in respect to understanding plays, getting a mind wrapped around it. And I don't even know about the rotations on offense. Watching the modern NBA, half the time the team, two guys go to the corner. So that's how is that what rotation is that? They just stand there the entire time. And then they go and they have a 3-man action, whatever, whether it's somebody screens inside, and then maybe there might be a motion with a 3-point guy, but it's generally pick and roll action or dribble handoff action, or they'll do a backdoor screen. Like, these things are not rocket science. And I've talked about it for a couple live streams and just in general in my videos, but they just say these things that just don't make any sense, in my opinion. To the point of, is that like another thing is that, only when we just came in the league, that's when targeted basketball started, where they just exploited weaknesses every play. I'm like, so you're going to tell me that in the last 15 years or so, 20 years, that coaches and players didn't notice that there was a mismatch on defense and then try to exploit it? That's essentially what they were saying, that they did it every play. And they continued that into the second episode. I don't understand how these suckers are talking about this. But to reel it back in, how can you not flip a play in your head? You got to be a dumb MFer to not say, let's just change the entire thing over here. How can you not visualize that? And you've been playing basketball in AAU 365, and then you go and you I'm sorry, I'm reading Michael G saying hunting is definitely more intentional now.
Well, my comment to the hunting thing is that I think hunting now has just been, give it to your best player and just let him. That's kind of my opinion, is that it's just become, give it to Luca, and that is the hunting. Whoever wants to guard him is fine with us, right? It doesn't matter, right? I don't know how, because even like back in the 90s, right, you could have a guy who maybe wasn't the best post-up player, but if you thought he had a big advantage, you'd give it to him, right? These days, I don't think teams are really, even if a guy's not that good, right, like you don't really trust him to have the ball in his hand every time, but he has a mismatch. I don't think teams are really going after it like that anymore. I think now the mismatch is just trying to get the best one-on-one guy the ball in space, and that's now the mismatch. In my opinion, that's kind of I think what it's turned into.
Yeah. The thing is though is that they've been targeting weaknesses. I To bring Rex up again, we were watching him. We were watching I think the 1980 NBA Finals where Kareem was just targeting Daryl Dawkins because he was so overplaying him. He would go and he would play him inside the paint. He would try to stop his right hand, but he overplayed it so much that uh, Kareem would just spin and do a layup because he had so much space to act because he just wasn't in the right position. He had bad footwork and bad balance, and he wasn't in the right position. So Kareem was smoking him. And he did the same play over and over again. And to the point of it is, it's just I don't understand how they're saying that that wasn't a thing. I mean, people do it in little league basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like it's obvious stuff to
Definitely, yeah.
do. You know what I'm saying? Like but they're saying it like it's a. I want to curse so bad. Like it's a monumental thing that they're doing. They're
Like it's
acting.
some new age phenomenon or something. Yeah, like
Yes.
it's yeah.
Now, unless the NBA was just that lazy and they didn't target players individually every play, I doubt that because they wouldn't have gotten that far or, unless it's just all purely entertainment like Rex has exclaimed, which I'm not saying I'm all the way against that, but to the aspect of it is that they've talked like it's the most monumental thing is that people have done targeted basketball, as they keep saying.
Yeah, like basketball is a game of matchups. Like that's the one of the oldest sayings about the game, right? So definitely not a new thing.
Yeah, it just drives me wild. Uh, But basketball's GOAT says, I've been trying to listen to JJ's and LeBron's podcast. I would love to hear things about the game from one of the greatest players in NBA history and an NBA player. Both know a lot about the game. Yeah, I'm not, especially their fans. They obviously find it entertaining. I find it entertaining in other ways. But to the point of it is that um, it's hey Pierre, I just think it's funny that they go and they are acting like what they're talking about is absolutely insane. I find it entertaining that you're hearing a conversation about basketball between two NBA players and they're talking basketball. I do find that entertaining, but they're trying to sell it as they're talking about monumental things.
But then at the same time, they say nobody knows how to flip a play, right? So like it's kind of they want to come off like they're so cool and like they're so smart, but at the same time they kind of like let the mask slip a little bit, and it's like, oh well, apparently the average player is really not that smart, right? And I was gonna say one thing is I remember in junior high we ran this. It was called motion flex, essentially, and you would go from anywhere. I mean, from one 3-point line to the other. You'd set 5 picks in the process. You'd have to know exactly where to be at a certain time. And again, I understand that as you get up in the game, the athlete becomes different, and running set plays like that maybe doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that is just to say, nothing in AAU is happening like that, right? Nothing in basketball, in my opinion, is really going on with even the most basic plays I remember us running, right? Like it just seems like it pick and roll is as complex as it gets now. Like
it's
that's why
like
you see it run ad nauseum, right? Because that's kind of it. And I should do more Mavs games. I fell off this year, but one thing I used to always say, like watching Kid, and I'd watch other teams versus how Kid coaches, like the Mavericks have no second and third ripple. They have nothing going on outside of the most obvious Luka Kyrie pick and roll, right? And then I'll watch other NBA teams who maybe don't have a superstar like that, and guys are going backdoor, they're running around, like it's just like there has be the pick and roll and the crutch on the athlete to run the pick and roll, right? I think has become a crutch, like I said. And again, like the creativity is just lacking in the NBA right now. And I think that's just a product of the player and the styles that have kind of evolved from what we've been talking about.
So on the sidebar, Pierre is saying that Rex told him that he's taking a break, spending time with his family. It's understandable. Um, and I hope he relaxes a bit and then comes back in the future. Uh, but what you're saying, Nick, I think in a phrase, watching NBA regular season basketball is almost like watching an amazing pickup basketball game. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
Unfortunately, yeah.
it's so simple. Anything that they do is not anything that anybody has never seen playing a pickup basketball game. There's no motion offense. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't rotate. They just sit there in the corners and you have a 2 or 3 man action at best for the most part. And it's
Yeah, like the 2-man game, like that became, I remember that becoming a phrase I heard more and more as I got older, right? And what is that? That's just give it to the two best guys, your best guard and your best big man, and let them try and score, right? Like that. I remember that also. I'm sure that's been around before my time too, but I felt like, oh, the 2-man game. I felt like that became a much more popular thing, kind of like when I was in high school and college and stuff like that.
yeah, and that's the thing that just kills me. Um and you might remember this. It was a big thing, and I thought it was the worst thing in the world because to they were trying to say that LeBron was doing this. But do you remember the bully ball era where the NBA was selling bully ball? Do you remember that's crazy stuff in the early 2010s?
I remember the term bully ball, but I don't really remember perhaps like the style that was happening at the time. I do remember one time in the 2000s, like there was one year the scoring like fell even below the 90s, right? Or something like that.
Oh no. But I'm saying that they were selling this in the early 2010s with LeBron that he was going to beat the Spurs through bully ball, or the Heat were going to beat them through bully ball
I
because
must have missed that narrative. I don't
they
remember that.
they were so individually good. Um, but yeah, to your point with the 2000s, yeah, in the early to mid 2000s, uh, and I guess even later on to a certain respect, but especially from the early 2000s to the mid 2000s, I think with the Lakers Detroit games, they were getting 70 or 80 points per game in that series a couple times. Like it was super low scoring games. Um, oh man, I got to find a bully ball commercial. That was hilarious.
I was about to say I was about to look up bully ball Heat's first finals.
Yeah, bully ball commercial.
Oh, it was a commercial?
Yeah,
2014. Was
yeah.
that it?
Yep, that's how they were going to beat the Spurs was bully ball, and it was the cringiest thing in the world for anybody that is not a. And I am a casual fan to the point of is that I don't hyper get into the X's and O's or anything. I just like watching the game. I like the history of the game. Um, I like to see my favorite players do well or the guys that they're selling do well, whatever. I don't claim to be a basketball savant, uh, but I do think that I have an understanding of what makes things be more successful than other things, just in general, not particularly basketball. So when I heard that bully ball stuff, I'm like, dog, these guys are going to get smoked if that's the
Yeah.
reason why they're going to beat the Spurs of
The
all teams.
Spurs, one of the best teams ever. Yeah, like I don't think that's gonna play out well. But go ahead, you try.
Yeah. No, but that commercial was hilarious.
Yeah, like I just love the game, man. Like I like a lot of people, maybe people I've debated think like I don't like the modern era. You know, there's like I always say it's just different, right? And so I am fortunate enough right now that the Mavs have a superstar in Luca, so it makes it maybe a little more palatable for me because watching a Luca or Kyrie is fun if they're on your team, right? But again, if you don't have one of those superstars, like I could see where this is just so frustrating to watch, right? Like you just probably don't like it. But I try to just remember, right? Like no one owns the game, right? And whatever happens is just going to happen and it'll go through cycles and revolutions and all kinds of stuff like that, right? So just watch it. You know, like it's entertainment, like we say now. It's entertainment. Like I just try to watch it and enjoy it. And again, having Luca definitely helps with my palate, you know, definitely makes it a lot more easier to digest. So One other thing I was going to say, and maybe someone can correct me, I could be way off here, but like, does anyone even run the triangle anymore?
So no, not in a totality. So they were actually talking about it on the second episode of the Mind the Game podcast. They were saying they would use elements, essentially, and I don't understand the triangle offense in general. I just know that by the name of it, you try to have somebody on the wing, and then you try to have somebody in the corner, and you have somebody in the post, and you run certain actions if you know, and it's a natural movement of things that you know with whenever somebody has a ball. I can't explain it, but the point is that the play calling is limited. There are certain motions that you do and certain actions, and you're supposed to just understand it all. So I know that much about it, but they talked about bringing up like split posts, or a post split, excuse me, where you some they talked about Draymond having in the post, and then essentially there's an off ball screen, and then they both run separate directions, one up to the wing and one to the corner. So I mean, to me, that's not a complicated play. It's just two guys running off of an off-ball screen.
Well, I guess my point I was
You
trying
know,
to get at is like, obviously there's pick and roll. You can always do that, the 2-man game we mentioned, but that's what I'm kind of saying is like, I don't really watch a whole lot of teams and they run like different like sets and offense. And again, it's because it's gone from a team game to more of this superstar driven game, right? You're paying this guy 30 million a year, like get the ball in his hands. You live and die by the guy you're paying the max contract to, right?
mhm.
And I think that's where it's like it's kind of hard to justify maybe in a way a team game and putting the ball in other people's hands when you have someone who's just so good and has such a good bag, right? That as a coach and a GM, it's easy to go to the owner and say, "Hey, man, we gave Luka the ball 30 times a game. Like, that that's what you paid him to do, right?" And I think it's easier for people to just kind of keep going along with it, correct? So I think those are kind of some things that are building on each other as well.
Well, one of the things with that too is that again, to bring up the subject of a lot of people are saying that a lot of the NBA players that they don't have basketball IQ, particularly with this Mind the Game podcast, although they talked about basketball IQ the entire first episode and saying how smart everyone is. I've heard in the past, though, especially in New York, when Phil Jackson had hired Derek Fisher and they were both in that organization, is that they tried to integrate the triangle offense onto that team, but nobody could get it. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's not that I think it probably could. Again, I'm a layman, I'm not a pro. A lot of people will claim that it can't work. I've heard that too, is that it wouldn't work in today's NBA. Um,
Yeah.
I've,
And
I've,
real
I've,
quick, just real
mm,
quick. So going back to the Mavericks, right? I'm a huge Rick Carlisle fan, but thing about Rick Carlisle is Carlisle's got a deep playbook, right? He's got a lot of wrinkles. He runs a very like old school traditional different sets and wrinkles and things like that. And that was one of the things that caused a riff in Dallas is you had these new guys coming to the front office and they're analytics driven and they want to be more player friendly driven because Dallas historically has not been like a big free agent destination and they want to get some other guys there for Luka. And, Carlisle's not exactly a player's coach, right? Like you get a superstar or two, they don't like what Carlisle's doing or they just want to play ball, they don't want to have to run these sets. Like it can cause a lot of friction and, these days the player wins, the coach goes, right? And that was something that reminded me is think about someone like Kidd. Kidd is very player friendly, right? Kidd is a former player, more modern, won a ring, that kind of thing, on the Mavs, and he's considered one of the greats. And this reminds me of Magic Johnson, right? We talk about the athlete versus the guy who can play. Let's be honest, Magic Johnson was a 6'9" athletic phenom, right? Like could handle the ball like a point guard at 6'9". How much does I hate to put it like this, but like Magic Johnson, remember he went to go try and coach, and he was not very good at getting the players to buy in and stuff. And I wonder how much someone like a Jason Kidd and Magic Johnson, who kind of largely live off just athletic instinct is the best way to put it, right? They just did. That's how good they were, right? And those guys being a coach, I don't think that translates very well compared to someone like Carlisle, who played, in the same era as Magic, but wasn't built like a Magic. And he had to react. He had to anticipate. He had to be a step ahead. He had to, again, play defense or rebound, whatever it was, to stay on the floor, right? A guy like that I think, is much more able to sort of, pass on what he's trying to tell people, tell them what they need to hear correctly, right? In terms of, I'm not the most athletic guy. Wasn't able just to walk out there and do it. I had to learn. I had to understand some nuance and some other things of the game that I could show you, right? And I think that doesn't vibe very well with like today's players, right? And players like a guy like Kidd, who's just like, we're just going to kind of run and gun and give Luka the ball and do a pick and roll. And like, if you watch the Mavs, there's really not much to their offense, right? Not necessarily, maybe it shouldn't be, but that's kind of what I think is that style is like, nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to play it. And Carlisle's doing pretty good in Indiana. Like, I think Carlisle will get the best out of your players on an offensive set, but doesn't always vibe very well with people.
Yeah, one thing with that, it made me think, the only guy that I think you could probably argue was a great player that was a coach in the NBA that I can think of off the top of my head is Lenny Wilkins. You've had good players. I mean, Doug Collins was a first overall pick. He had a good career amongst a lot of other players, including Phil Jackson.
Bird was okay.
Well, yeah, you're right. There's Bird, Isaiah Thomas. I was thinking of guys that were more, actually won a championship, but that's right. That's fair. I would say that they were good coaches. I mean, Bird went to the finals. But yeah, I didn't put that out there in respect to I was trying to say who was a great coach and a great player. But a lot of the great coaches were good players. Rick Carlisle was a bench player. If you want to say Casey Jones, but I think that's a stretch because he was, a bench player a lot of those seasons. So, with the Celtics as well. But guys that won championships, I can't think of a coach that was a great player that won a championship outside of Lenny Wilkins. Is there somebody you could think of?
I mean, didn't Russell win a few rings as a coach?
As a player coach. I don't really count that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So maybe.
Yeah, he was still playing. So, I mean, you can argue that, but you get what I'm trying to say. An actual coach that is separate from the game. But yeah, Bill Russell, I don't include that in that because when he wasn't on the sideline, he was in between the lines. So.
Rudy T, maybe Rudy Tomjanovich. He won 2 with the Rockets. He was a former player. I mean, he wasn't like an amazing player. I think he was maybe a couple All-Stars or something.
I thought he played with the Rockets in the 80s. He was on the 90s teams. I thought he got.
I meant he I'm sorry. You were saying won a ring as a player and a coach. Sorry, yeah. No, he didn't win a ring with the Rockets as a player.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is that yeah, but yeah. Michael G says Ty Lue, but he wasn't a great player. Yeah, I think off the top of my head, I think it's only Lenny Wilkins. I mean, I'd have to actually really research it, but it's because otherwise and even, but you said, I'm sorry, what did you say Rudy's accomplishments were? He was
I was thinking he was a former player and he went back to back with the Rockets as a coach. And you were saying who had done both as a player and coach.
Oh, here's Rex.
There he is.
There's Rex. Bill Sharman, Billy Cunningham. Well, Billy Cunningham, yeah. Billy Cunningham was good. Bill Sharman, yeah, I mean, I guess he won Rookie of the Year, right? Over Russell.
And then just to clarify real quick, because a guy had mentioned what I said about Kidd. What I was trying to say about Kidd was, if you watch Kidd play, right? Kidd, of course, had a high IQ and all these things, but the way Kidd played was not necessarily like a set half court offense, read it. He was much more like an up and down, free flowing, great off ball defender, right? He thrives so much on just athletic instinct. That's what I was saying, right? When I think of Kid, I don't think of like methodical half court pick you apart. He could do that, right? But he was more up and down, free flowing. He was creative. He was, again, I think he's one of the best off ball guards of all time, easily, right? But that's what I meant is like you look at some of these guys and how they played compared to when they try to coach, right? And the way Kid played matches up very well with how he coaches. It's very much like we kind of just have an overall thought process and strategy, right? But in timeouts, in tight spots, Kid he struggles. He doesn't have good play sets, and that's kind of, I think that translates kind of what I was trying to say. Like him and Magic just did, right? How good does that translate to being a coach? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Rex says Sharman and Cunningham, top 75 players that won rings as coaches. Yeah, that's a good easy metric to go by. No, but he corrected me with Tom Heinsohn versus Bill Sharman. I was saying that Danny Ferry, who was a Cleveland player, was on the Bulls. I said it twice the other night, and I'm like, I don't think it's. I was thinking of Quentin Daly instead of Danny Ferry, and I guess it just because it rhymed or something, I just stuck in my head. In respect to some question of who did three players ever have 25 points apiece when Michael Jordan was on the team, and Michael Jordan didn't get it. So I thought it might have been including Quentin Daly, but I said Danny Ferry. So
Yeah. Yeah, someone mentioned Steve Kerr. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Phil Jackson was also Phil Jackson won as a player. I must have misremembered
yeah,
that.
he was on the Knicks and won the
Okay.
championships. And I meant as an elite player
Yeah.
that won a
Yeah, I got you.
championship. You know what I mean? So, but yeah. So I guess, but yeah, 70 and 73. Rex says with the Knicks. Yeah, he was on the Knicks and did fairly well there, but he definitely was not the best player on the team or the top 3 or 4 or 5 arguably best players on the team. But yeah, Pat Riley, I mean, he was a bench player too. So, on the Lakers, but yeah, I mean, and not to say they weren't good players; they're all professionals. So I'm just trying to make the distinction of the best player
Yeah, I
on what
got you.
you know what I'm saying. Um, what do you think about the future of AAU? Do you think it's just going to get worse, or do you think that they're going to maybe try to maybe turn it around? Because I don't think the organization in itself is bad. I just think it's AAU basketball, particularly over the last 20 plus years or so.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of talked about this before, and this kind of goes back to, you know, uh, just try to enjoy the game. And what I mean by that is like there will always be revolutions, right? And I've kind of said like I think in the next 5 to 10 years here, I think the post game is going to come back a little bit, in my opinion. Are we going to have guys like 7-2, 7-3, like Embiid post up? Like I think we're going to get some kind of like Charles Barkley types. I think we're going to get like some 6'8", 6'9", 6'6", guys who really focus on post scoring and kind of getting to the basket in a more methodical way. I think that will come back to the game. We kind of already see it a little bit with, you look at someone like Luka. He really loves to try to bump his way, as close as he can sometimes to get close to the basket. I think that kind of ball will come back. More of this Spurs, Utah Jazz kind of use the clock. We're trying to use 20 plus seconds. We're trying to get a good methodical shot, waste time. If you have the other team has the ball, you can't score, right? So like waste time, use the entire shot clock, and we're going to play defense. And as soon as they get behind by a little bit, I mean, the clamps and the anaconda squeeze kind of starts to take effect, right? I think there will always be a counter to the to the new thing, right? So that's kind of my opinion how I think it's going to go largely, right? I think there will be a big emphasis on running guys off the 3-point line in terms of defense. Like I think there will be revolutions to it. And so how does that take effect in AAU, or will that come from AAU? That's the part I don't know. I don't know how and when this might take place. Maybe the international game is somewhat of a counterbalance in a weird way to sort of the American superstar driven AAU that we're seeing now. Maybe people kind of see the Jokic Luka kind of, the way that they play, very methodical, can do a little bit of everything, good passers, right? The international game really hasn't been so much tainted by like the individual superstar game that we've seen come alive in the USA recently, right? So will the AAU adjust, or will that adjustment come from the AAU? I'm not sure. I don't know if it will be the AAU implementing changes, or if changes will make force the AAU to start teaching the game differently, right? And how this comes about, I'm not sure. But I do think the more methodical, into the post, work the shot clock scheme kind of style, I think that will make a little bit of a resurgence in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So people can clip this, I guess, and post it, and we'll see what happens. But I think that will come back in some kind of way, right? Trying to get a good shot, right? And playing good defense. You got to think defense is going to make a resurgence, right? At some point, I would think, right? Can we get a guy or two on our team that can keep guys off the 3-point line, run them off, and kind of cover them full court, right? Even if they're not the best offensive guy. I think that guy might make a little bit of a comeback, right? So, will the AAU be the leader of this change or counter? That's the part I don't know. And what will come from the AAU, whether it's by thinking ahead or being forced to change, that's kind of the question. But yeah, I think the AAU will change eventually in some capacity to a more team style, methodical game, trying to get good basketball minds again and working on that. I hope that comes. I hope that change does come. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if the AAU is going to change. I think there's too much money in it. I think there's too much entertainment value in it for the kids. I think there's that it's just going to get, in my opinion, I think it's just going to get worse. But to your points, and I've talked about it before, I think there is a resurgence of the big man, especially Jokic. His post game is, I don't want to say it's underappreciated, but generally I don't want to say most of the highlights, but it seems like most of the highlights are him taking the ball up, doing a fancy pass, maybe shooting a 3-pointer. But he's a killer in the paint too. And he'll body people, like you're saying, like Luka does. And then to a lesser extent, the guys like Embiid, and even to other respects like Giannis. But I think there's a big man resurgence in the league. And I think and let alone Wembanyama, who's, lauded as the next big thing, which I think he will be, but just to the outside of injuries, if that happens. But the point of it is that I think that the big man in the post game has a spot in the modern NBA, because we're talking about the triangle before. But I don't think that the AAU is going to refocus on that in respect to making it a skill that they focus on within there. Obviously, what's up?
Sorry, go ahead.
No. I didn't really have much to say.
I was going to say, well, here's the thing why I said, will the AAU be forced to change, or will they get ahead of the curve in some way? The kids will always decide. And what I mean by that, right, is kids see guys like Curry, they want to be Curry. Guys see guys like Jordan, or kids see guys like Jordan, they want to be Jordan, right? So kids watch the pros, they watch college, right? And so whether the AAU likes it or not, right, the kids will play who they want to play like, right? Michael kind of made the joke earlier that I myself kind of played like a Dirk, but in a 5'10", 5'11" frame, right? So that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like kids will play how they want to play, right? I mean, whether it's conscious or subconscious or what have you, right? As the style of the NBA changes and that's what kids watch, that's what they'll start doing, right? Whether the coaches like it or people don't like it or what, because the end of the day, I mean, this is now a superstar talent driven league and game largely. It always has been, but just a little bit of a different style now. If the new big talent, the new athlete comes in, he says, "Man, I want to play like John Stockton or something like that." Well, that's as a coach, you say, "This is how my best player plays. I got to work around that. I have to put them in the best position based on their skill set and how they play." Right? You know, you're. I've always said one of your biggest jobs as a coach: play to your strengths, hide your weaknesses. You put your players in the best spot to make the best plays. Right? You take as much of the thought off their mind as possible in terms of when you get it here, it should just be instincts from here, right? Get here, get in the spot. This is where you thrive. You have a few responsibilities, and then that's it, right? So whether the AAU again changes because the kids make them, because the kids will ultimately decide, right? And I think that's our hope is if the NBA changes, the kids change, and if the kids change, the AAU changes, right? I think that's probably how it will play out. Uh, you know, and you're right. There's a lot of money in politics, and with that, people don't want to change, or change comes a little slower, or it takes a a slap in the face to change, right? But I think it will change, right? It's more interesting what the NBA is going to turn into the next 10 years. Kids will watch that, and then that will ultimately affect the AAU.
Two things. If somebody wants to call in, you're welcome to call in. But Basketball Goat asks, who do you guys think will win MVP? Who do you think is going to win MVP this year?
It's still Jokic right now, isn't it? Isn't he leading still?
Yeah, I mean that's whatever. To me, those polls are just to get people hyped up because sometimes, and not to say that they don't come true. I do believe they lead the masses with those predictions or whatever in these power rankings is to hype them up for who would actually win. And most of the time it's accurate, but I would say it's Jokic.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I want to say Luka, right? That Mavs have been on a tear lately, but I don't know if you saw that latest video from Jimmy High Roller where he had a great line about Luka where Luka's already gotten MVP fatigue, even though he's never won the MVP, you know, like voter fatigue, and he hasn't even won one yet because he's been just so good from the start that the bar was so high and it's hard to get above that, right? But you know, they looked at like some past MVPs like Westbrook and even Jokic the year they won it. And, you know, the Mavs win totals aren't that far off, right? And so I would love for Luka to win, man. I honestly think, you know, just straight up looking at his numbers, I think they're a little better than Jokic's, you know, maybe not the rebounds, but he's beating him in points and assists. Man, I would love for Luka to get it, man. I think he's been on such a tear. We'll see how they end the season and whatnot, but I would love for Luka to get it. But yeah, I think Jokic will probably, because of the better team record, he'll probably get it. I think Luka deserves it, to be honest. I'm being a little biased and I'm pulling for my guy, but Jokic will probably win it.
Yeah, and it sucks when you have especially at the top where it could be whoever it is, you know, whatever era it is. I think one of the most famous MVP races of all time is the Oscar Robertson triple double year, the Wilt Chamberlain 50 point per game year, and then the Bill Russell winning
Russell won it.
Yeah. And you know, so
and that was almost solely based on their record for the most part, right?
I don't think he even had the leading record. I don't. I think that the
Bucks,
the Warriors had the record with or talking about that back then with
yeah.
Because he was on the Royals at that time. If you're talking about Oscar Robertson, but I think that if I might be mistaken, but I think that Wilt Chamberlain had the best record in the league at that time too, regular season wise.
I got to get on Rex. I hate the James Harden Luka comparisons. I don't know what you think about that, but look, Luka has a mid-range game. He's got a post game. I think he's got much better passing skills, much better half-court awareness. I think he even plays definitely what is better defense even than James Harden ever did, right? So I hate the Luka Harden comparisons. I should maybe do a video on that, but he just said that. It reminded me that I hate that comparison.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I see it. I get it. Right. I get it, but I just don't agree.
yeah, I don't all the way agree with it, but I see it. Just so the point of it is that he's Luca does similar things to James Harden, but I believe that James Harden is more athletic. Luca hasn't won a scoring title yet, has he?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he has either. I think it's been Embiid won it, and then I know Harden won it a couple years before then. Uh, but yeah, um, I do think
He's never led the league in points per game. He's
yeah,
gotten over 33 years, including two 29-point years, but never led the league. That's crazy, man.
yeah, because I think Steph won the last couple of years, or not the last couple of years, but in the teens, the late teens,
Yeah.
um, as well with Harden, and then Embiid won it, and they made it a big deal because he was a center. But yeah, I think that I I can't unless the Mavs win, and I'm a proponent of this. I think that you have to have the team wins too. You have to have the individual statistics and the team wins. I don't think that uh, I don't think that Russell Westbrook should have won that year when they were the eighth seed with his triple double year when he won the MVP that one year. I don't think he should have won it, even though and he was going to get it just because it was the triple double year of his, the first one since Oscar Robertson. They were just doing it just to sell tickets, but I don't think he deserved it. Because what's the difference between 9 and 10 or 9.8 to 10? You know, however you want to split hairs in respect to assists or rebounds. What does that matter to your team success? You know what I'm saying? Because I think it needs to equate with both of those personally.
Yeah, they're 7.5 games back behind Denver right now. So about 51 and 22 for the Nuggets, 43 and 29 for the Mavs.
What are they in seventh or something like that?
They're in sixth. They're half a game up on the Suns in seventh.
Yeah. No, I mean, Rex says, "Is it true Ice Cube offered Caitlin Clark a contract to play in the 3-on-3 league?" He, yeah, I heard it was $5 million. I don't know. I don't
Against
think
men, like the 3-on-3 leagues, anybody, right?
Yeah, well, it wasn't against. Well, I don't want to say it was. It wasn't. I, me personally, I don't think it's worth $5 million to sign her, because I hate to say it. I just think that these former professional players are going to smoke her. Like it's even though she's a great 3-point shooter, a great scorer, whatever. It would just be a novelty act, and then after the first few games, I think people would get disinterested. That's just my opinion on it. I just
Yeah,
don't.
it's definitely
Don't.
not a dollars and cents play to pay her. It's to get eyeballs on the 3-on-3 league.
Yeah, but $5 million. I don't think it's worth $5 million. I don't. But that's just me. To get her there, that's cool. Don't get me wrong, but she gets smoke checked unless they just let her shoot, which they might just do. But just to the point of it is that in respect to competing, I don't think she is going to be able to really compete unless they just make her the face essentially, and they let her
And
just.
what's like the top WNBA contract?
I don't think it's $5 million. I think it might be like one or two. But Michael says she'll bring eyeballs though. Yeah, I think she will immediately. And then Rex says she'll be using a men's ball likely. I don't think they would change it up for her. I think eyeballs will come, and then once it hits the internet and they see her get smoked, I don't think people are gonna. Me personally, I don't think people are gonna be interested in watch her getting smoked.
So the top WNBA contract is $242,000.
Oh wow, yeah.
So $5 million. I mean, that's a hefty pay increase.
I mean, I would do it if I were her. Don't get me wrong. I just think that I
It'd wear
don't
off really quick. I could see that.
I don't think it'd be good for both of them in the long run. I mean,
Yeah.
outside of $5 million. So $5 million, I would do it if I were Caitlin Clark in a heartbeat. In the big three, no, man, she's gonna get smoke checked unless they just let her shoot 3-pointers. And if she can shoot with a men's ball, like Rex said, I don't know if she can. But
Yeah, that was I was some people were talking about, I don't know what happened recently, but there it was like maybe a couple months ago where again the whole debate about can a high school it was the Outkick guy. He said, can a high school boys bicycle team beat the best WNBA players or something like that? And it was kind of like, well, how would you do it? Like maybe the women would have a 24-second shot clock with the women's ball, and you just play till it's a turnover or you score, or or the other team gets possession, and then you'd switch balls and switch offense, defense, something like that. It'd be a little tricky.
well, and that's the thing. Just thinking about it, why have a women's ball? I get the dynamics that women are generally smaller, but why haven't they lowered the rim or raised the rim for men or whatever? If you're going to change the ball and not have it be standard versus the genders or sex or whatever the politically correct term is nowadays, um, why have a different ball? It should be the same, in my opinion. If you're not going to change the entire field of play outside of the ball, it doesn't make any sense. And the 3-point line, but that's whatever, another story. So, and maybe I don't know. Rex might know this, or maybe somebody else in the chat. But I think that the length of the court is the same, but I might be mistaken. If it's different and somebody knows, please let me know. But I think everything is the same minus the ball and the 3-point line, if you count that.
Yeah, I think it's all the same, but minus the 3-point line. Yeah, it's all the same though.
Yeah. So why not have it be the same ball? Or, at least at this point, Rex says the ball changed numerous times. Yeah. And I get that. But to the point of I think it's been pretty standard for a while at this point. Why not at least have it be the same size? Outside of the grip or the seams or whatever you call it, of the basketball. The size. Why not have it be the same size? I don't know. But that's to the point of it is that if you're going to integrate the game with a woman and men, then it gets tricky. So that's the point of it, is why not just have it all be the same thing?
Yeah, and someone brought up Harden had a scoring title, but Luka hadn't. Luka might get his first scoring title this year, so we'll see. He's leading the league right now.
And Rex says hand size is the reason, and I think
Yeah, of course.
I understand that. It's just that women are generally smaller than men. But when you go and you get into the WNBA or the pros, they're still around the average size of a man. So, but they all play with men of the same size play with the men's ball, regardless. What I'm getting at is that if you're a pro, you're generally at least around the average size of a man, 5'9" ish. So, whatever. But I know why that I agree. That is the reason for typical basketball players, is that women are generally smaller than men. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you do have anything else to say about this? I've been dropping the link if anyone wants to call in. Maybe some people are just listening. If you want to call in, I've dropped the link numerous times.
Oh, that's fine. It's just another topic, just more content. Just put it into the record book. We covered AAU. Put it away.
Oh, this is what I wanted to ask you, because this got brought up talking with Angry Old Hoops. He also made a video lately about the 2011 Mavs. And I told him that I know you would be super interested in talking about that championship run.
I try to talk to people about it every day, but they just don't seem interested. I don't get it. Guys at work, I'm like, have y'all heard about this 2011 Mavs run? It was pretty incredible. And they're just like, whatever.
Oh my God. So I was telling you before the show briefly, but I was doing my, and and I even said during the show that this is a way to claim with some sort of objectivity that LeBron is not a top 10 player of all time. And man, just it's people just kill me, dude. Like,
He was saying because of Angry Old Hoops was saying because of 2011, it proves he's not a top 10 player.
no. I was going off on another rant. No, but
Oh, okay.
he was just doing content about it. But I was saying that I did a show last night, and just some of the comments is just it's just funny. Um, but yeah,
What about?
no, because I would say, well, here's just a general way that you can make a reason for it. I'm saying, and I even said, prefacing it, is that I don't necessarily believe that he's not top 10, but here's a way that you can say that he's not. And because a lot of people love to hate LeBron. So it's just like, well, here's a way that you could do it. And some of the comments, or, within the live chat or the comments otherwise, were just, oh, there's no way. And then the Travis guy had said, you don't know basketball if you don't have Kareem, LeBron, and Michael as a top three. That, you're an idiot if you don't have them as a top three. That you don't know anything about basketball.
Yeah.
And it's like just stuff like that. Like, if you disagree, that's fine. I just made a case for how you can explain it. And I even said, again, that I don't necessarily believe that he's outside the top 10. But just to the point of, I think there are three tenets of greatness, which is influence, team success, and individual dominance, or dominance within all of those particularly. And I don't know, it just didn't go over well to the LeBron fans particularly. And then I asked, well, I did just say preface because that is the way you can say it. But anyway, I just thought it was funny because they'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a hater. I was like, well, then can you explain how he is otherwise? How he's great, not the best or basketball player of all time, which I don't think he's the best basketball player of all time either, but that's a separate subject. And then obviously there were no answers.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron, if you're going to make the argument that LeBron is the GOAT, like it is the accumulation and longevity argument, right? And if that's your thing, like that's fine. It'd just be nice if people like would admit it, right? That like largely what their argument hinges on is looking at the total all NBA selections, looking at the total finals appearances, looking at the total points, right? Like it's a totality accumulation argument, which is fine. I just wish that they would admit that that's like the bulk of their argument, right? Because he's only ever led the league twice in any stat. Michael has still led the league more times in all the analytics combined, right? He's been number one, led the league, right? Like he just doesn't have that, like I say, that pedigree of like why you could make the argument he's the GOAT. That's just the one thing for me is like I just don't think he has like this. A lot of people will say the all-time points or something like that, right? But points per game is more important to me than points you accumulated because you played for a really long time, right? It's still incredibly impressive. It's still an all-time great, but when it comes to the GOAT thing, in my opinion, that's largely what their argument has to hinge on is just the accumulation over time, which, you guys know I like peak over accumulation.
Yeah. And I thought it was funny, just with that as well, is that you got guys that have more total statistical points. Rex brought it up, and Kareem, and I checked it, has more total accumulated statistics than LeBron. And then you got guys like John Stockton, who has 2 of the 5 major statistical career records. So what are they really talking about outside of, still just making it arbitrary? And it is arbitrary, the entire thing. But I think that with the tenets of influence, team success, and individual dominance, all of them being dominant, it's Michael Jordan in spades. But that's
Yeah, I differ with you on the off the court stuff. I know you put a lot more emphasis on that. Usually, when I like make rankings, like I typically don't put a lot of weight on that stuff. Just my like I just like to look at what's happening on the court. But
Hmm.
like definitely, you can make the argument that like Steph Curry's influence, right, is almost second to none. Besides, obviously like Michael or Bill or some other great person like that, right? That you could easily throw that into your formula and say this is a reason why. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree, right? I just typically that's kind of more like marketing and stuff like that. But influence is huge, man. Like that's why AI will always be a legend, right? Because he just so many people identified with him, and he's like one of us, right? He's just a dude off the playground, just trying to get to the hole and win by any means necessary, right? So he'll always be. He didn't win a title, but he'll always be a legend for that, right? So there's something to that.
Yeah, and he was an individually dominant player because he won 4 scoring titles. He didn't win the team titles, but I think there's an argument that he was one of the most influential players of all time. Not to rank him against all other influential players, but during his time, uh, you can argue that he was number one from the late 90s to early 2000s.
Yeah, dude, and you talk about shoes with Jordan, like, dude, those Reebok shoes are still probably some of my favorite shoes that have ever come out, right? The honeycomb Reeboks that, dude, everybody loved those shoes, man. Those shoes were hotcakes for a while, man.
Jared K asked, "Am I serious with the mic intake?" A lot of people just don't get it. I am serious with the mic intake. I think he's a greater basketball player than LeBron James. I don't think he's a better basketball player than LeBron James, but he has better team, individual, and influence over LeBron. Um, period. He had more team success by the numbers. He had more individual dominance by the numbers, and he had, in my opinion, more influence and impact on the league than LeBron has.
I mean, he is kind of the godfather of the NBA in a way.
Yeah. So, and if you disagree with that, but again, words have meaning, and how I describe a certain definition of greatness, I've explained it a billion times. But to answer it, yes, I am serious with the mic and take. I think he's a greater basketball player than LeBron James. I don't think he's a better one. Jared K says the numbers do not show that. You can watch one of my like 3 or 4 shows where I break it down for hours on end.
Nobody covers Mikan like we cover Mikan here.
Yeah, nobody covers Mikan like me, but no, but no, I think he's wildly underappreciated, and I understand why due to recency bias. It is definitely some time ago, 70 years ago. Um, and then Rex is bringing the watered down league, but let me finish my thought. I just saw that pop up. Um, but yeah, just people just underappreciate him. I believe due to recency bias, he dominated the league for the majority of his career, just like Bill Russell did. And he's one of the few players to ever do that as the leader of a team. Because otherwise, you can include guys like a lot of the players on the '60s Celtics, including John Havlicek, and he did grow into that. I'm not saying he didn't, and he was the leader of a team, but yeah. Rex says the only reason fans argue about rings is because of a watered down league. You have iconic individuals like AI slumming on mediocre teams for a decade. Yeah. And for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of AI, even being from the general Philadelphia area. But I can't deny his greatness, and his influence on basketball culture and his scoring dominance. Because even if he was slumming on all of these bad teams, which I get the point, and I'm not saying that in the expansion era didn't include more people that weren't playing, they did. But to the point of it is that he still was the best scorer during that time 4 times over everybody, including those bad guys and every other amazing player in the league that may have been more deserving in that aspect. And then, yeah, like I said, the influence. But yes, he didn't win championships. That's the thing. And I'm a Philly guy, and I thought he kind of had a bad attitude. So that kind of killed me. Like what if Luca was just had a terrible attitude? How would you feel about it?
Yeah, like I can't stand. He complains to the refs a lot. He's gotten a lot better about that this year, but yeah, like the way cries to the refs a lot and does he. His problem is that he's like Shaq in the fact that he invites a lot of contact, right? And that's hard for the refs to manage. I think he gets frustrated a lot. I wish, like you said, like I think that's part of having a bad attitude. It turns me off a little bit. He'll be arguing with the ref instead of getting back on defense or something, right? So I yeah, definitely like if he was like that or even worse, right? Just yeah, it would definitely be a big turnoff for sure. I liked having Rajon Rondo on the Mavs until he just totally quit on us, right, and walked out. So like, yeah, definitely, I wouldn't like that. It probably rubbed me wrong though, in many ways.
Jared K. I don't know if you just show up to the comments and don't watch my videos otherwise. I know you come to the live stream a lot. Um, but just for you, because you've come for a long time, I will re explain it. So, influence wise and impact for what Mikan did, he was the pioneer of the NBA. I'm not going to go long winded on this because I have, but to the point of it is that he was the first superstar of the NBA. He dominated the league with championships and statistics. And wait, I'm sorry. Pierre said Rondo is in jail now. I wonder why. Please elaborate because that must have been new. Um, but he says, how can you say that in terms of impact? Yeah, because in 20 years it's going to be 80 million. You got to take the aspects of I'm not going to really I'm trying not to nerd out over this, but you have to think of exponents of the growth and how it matters over time, and the economy of numbers and how it really just is true to the times. Um, and I'll leave it at that because I'm not nobody
Yeah,
wants
y'all are just never gonna agree
nobody
on.
nobody wants me to talk about math, so I'm not.
Yeah, Rondo
uh,
was apparently arrested in Indiana January 30th on misdemeanor gun and drug charges.
oh, okay, but he's in jail now.
That's what's from January 30th. So I don't know what the latest is. I'm sure he's probably out already. Maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Jared also says pioneer, but not more influential or better by any metric. All right, like Nick said, we're just gonna go and disagree. Again, I didn't say he could beat LeBron one on one in a vacuum. They'd never be able to play each other because they're in different eras, whatever. But you know, again, you just don't understand what I'm saying, or think that it matters. Either one. So, and that's fine if you don't. That's your opinion. But I appreciate you watching the video, as you said. Rex says should do a mock draft of the modern NBA roster with only 10 teams. You'd be shocked at who was teamed up on the bench and not making the league. That's an interesting show. Um, I'd be down to do that sometime.
That's actually a good rebuttal to the whenever me and Rex debated the eras, and it was kind of like a two-edged sword where it's like, well, more players means more talent, but less teams means much tighter competition, right? Like that's actually a pretty decent thought experiment to go through.
Tim Nick asks, I'm late to the stream. You can make a short conclusion of the AAU basketball destroyed modern NBA. If not, I will watch later. No issue. In a word, yes, it did.
Yeah, well, essentially, like I'll try to do it quickly. We thought that me personally, I think it started when guys stopped playing multiple sports and they started hyper focusing on one sport. In my opinion, that led to the culmination of picking the athlete over the player, if that makes sense. With this comes guys like that we kind of see now, right? Guys who come in, they're athletes, they want to score 25, 30 points a game. AAU is now preferring that kind of style. when you have younger kids, athleticism is huge, right? Instead of developing skills, you're just getting the best athletes and running other kids out of the gym, right? And this has led to the style that we kind of think of now, right? Kids are being filtered to score 25, 30 points a game. And then, like, we kind of tied it back to the LeBron and Reddick podcast when they said they were just trying to flip plays and players didn't know what to do. That we think that's kind of where this has led. It's like, do superstars have a deeper bag now? Like, yeah, maybe you could make that argument. That doesn't necessarily make them more skilled, but that this is the style now. It's a superstar driven league instead of a team driven league. And, we think that these superstars, maybe if you wanted to make the argument, again, they have a deeper bag, but the average player is just not as, uh, does not have the same depth of just basketball awareness because it's much more athletic instinct. It's just, you're good at one or two things and you're an athlete, and that's just kind of what the game is now, right? So, largely, yeah, we think that the AAU turned into a track meet instead of a basketball game, if that maybe makes sense.
So Rex and Jared, and not to get back into this, but I will. So yeah, in respect to LeBron's legacy, he's not finished his career, so maybe he can do something amazing over the next couple of years. I find it unlikely, but whatever. When I go and compare them, I'm comparing it as if his career stopped today because people already say he's the GOAT. So I made that video based on that. So we'll see over time, to Rex's point, what LeBron's legacy will be. And you were talking about influence being the face of the league. I feel like they've tried to make him the face of the league, and some people would agree that he is. But I do believe that guys like Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry have been the real faces of the league, and LeBron is the pseudo face of the league that they push. I believe that Kobe Bryant and Steph Curry have been far more influential over basketball culture than LeBron James, and that's just my opinion on it. So, talking about 30 million views in 2016 and that he's the face of the league. On paper, you could say that, and they talk about him all the time on TV because they're pushing this GOAT narrative that he somehow weaseled his way into, that somehow guys like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just magically fell off, who you could argue is still greater in respect to team, individual, and influence at that level, more than LeBron James. But to the point of it is that I believe that he was not really the face of the league. I believe the two guys that I mentioned before were actually more the most impactful players during that time.
Yeah, I would throw a little nuance in. I think like what you're trying to say with Curry and who else did you? Kobe, like Curry and Kobe. I think they have been better ambassadors to the league, a better business representation, professionalism. LeBron is professional, don't get me wrong, but he's very polarizing. He gets a little politically involved, which is fine, whatever. You can say whatever you want. But he's very polarizing, right? And so that does leave a lot of people who will not recognize him or would prefer someone else over him as the face of the league, right? So, like it seems like in the past, there's always been a guy, maybe besides like the Bird and Magic era, who was the face of the league, right? It was Michael for a while and then Kobe. It always seems like there's a guy. And so with LeBron, it does feel like people kind of don't want to pick him as like when I think about basketball the last 20 years, like I don't know, LeBron was great, right? But I think about him and Curry. I feel like Curry has just as much stake and influence, like you were saying, an ambassador, and he's been maybe a little more low key on things, etc. Right? That could you call LeBron the face of the league? Yeah, I guess you could, just by a statistical dominant standpoint, right? But I think ambassador is a good word. I think other people would prefer other players as the representation of the league when they think about it, right? So,
yeah, no, and I get what you're saying with that. Jared K says, "Why stop at LeBron if Mikan is such a pioneer? What separates Jordan from him?" Honest question. So I think that in comparison versus LeBron James to Michael Jordan, George Mikan has way more of a case of being the GOAT. That's kind of the point of saying it. The difference is that the individual statistical dominance Michael Jordan had over the league surpassed Mikan. Now again, Mikan had a shorter career, but even percentage wise, in respect to statistical titles versus years played, it was higher. Um, on, you can split hairs and start talking about, well, what about the rebound titles? He had 3 out of 7 categorized NBA years. George Mikan, and then but Michael Jordan had 10 out of 15 scoring titles, and then 3 out of 15 steals titles, and then George Mikan had 2 scoring titles. He also didn't win as many championships. The influence, I think, is the biggest argument there. However, I think that with Michael Jordan, just the expansion of the league during that time, excuse me, and then just the influence over the world, the being credited with making it worldwide, whether fair or not, and then just with the shoes, all that sort of stuff. Again, if you don't think that categorizes greatness, I feel that people that don't think that should apply that across the board to guys like Muhammad Ali, that were showmen, just like Michael Jordan was, in a different aspect in respect to how he sold his shoes and how he did the commercials and how he was marketed. Because otherwise, if you think Muhammad Ali is the greatest, then you have to have that same kind of idea of with in the light of Michael Jordan, in my opinion. Now, I just think that's consistent. Otherwise, you could say, well, maybe Floyd Mayweather's the greatest if you're going to just attribute it to being the best. Granted, it's a different sport, whatever. There's all these variables to it, but just to give an example. But yeah.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Michael was saying LeBron is clean cut. One thing I will probably give LeBron credit for more than even his basketball prowess is the fact that he has been in no real big scandals. His entire career, he's been under the spotlight, and he hasn't done something just really stupid, right? I definitely give him credit for that. He seems like a family man. Again, what happens behind the scenes as a global NBA star, I don't know, but I think he's still with the same woman that he dated in high school, if I'm not mistaken, and seems like a good dad. He's very there's nothing to really complain about, but the polarizing thing is more like some of the things he said, the Migos comments, the reading books, right? And I've always said this about LeBron: everything seems planned and staged and thought out. And this is how I want to look. This is how I want to come across, right? That has always been my friction with LeBron that drives me. I just can't stand is that he is always worried about his image. And I get it. I get it. You're a billionaire, right? Your image is important, right? I totally understand. But just like to the average NBA fan, some of those things, and again, I kind of mentioned some political comments he made, which isn't, I don't care, right? But those are the things that people, I think, sometimes switches them off of LeBron, right? I've always said, LeBron, you have to give him credit for not getting in some big scandal, whether he paid to cover it up or it'll come out 10 years from now. I don't know. But he seems like a good dad, a good family man. He seems like he keeps his nose clean for the most part, right? That he should get a lot of credit for that. I do think, just being honest, right? He's got a cleaner nose technically on paper and record than Michael Jordan even, right? Not that again, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. I don't really care if you gamble or whatever, as long as you're not hurting other people. But, LeBron he is fairly done a great job off the court with just not doing something stupid. That's probably the best way to put it.
Welcome, Pierre. How are you today? Can you hear me? You might be on mute. Or you might be continuing to have internet issues.
Pierre, check your settings, your mic settings.
But yeah, with the whole LeBron thing, I've said before, It was just, or I don't want to say it was just. It's the video I did yesterday and the equation, but I do believe they are the tenets of greatness. I really do believe that is individual statistical dominance, team dominance, and influence over the game to the point where you make change or major impact on basketball culture. So
Yeah, like,
that
and it's hard for LeBron to change the game because none of us are 6'9", built like a linebacker. Like, like it's hard for a average kid to identify with that, right? Kind of the same thing with Shaq. People like Shaq changed the game. Like, I don't really think so. He was just so dominant, right? That doesn't mean you change the game. He was just so dominant as a center, right? But someone like Jordan, we're talking about this transition from big man to this guard heavy league now we're in. The average even me being, 5'11", 6 foot, I can look at Jordan and I can at least be like, I can shoot an 18-footer. Like I can, it's much more the average person kind of what's like the word kind of tends to float towards being more like Michael and being an influence on people because the average person can be like, well, I'm not 6'6" with the 40-inch vertical or whatever, but some of the things he's doing on the court, I can definitely identify with more than LeBron. What am I going to identify with LeBron? Like, there's nothing about LeBron that I could say, oh, I could do that, or like, oh, that's feasible. Like, he's a absolute just freak. Like, there's nothing about that I can identify with. So the whole changing the game and influence, that's kind of how I view it. Is, did you really change the way the game was played or how people viewed the game? I don't really think LeBron has done that.
I don't think LeBron is particularly likable like Mike as well. I think even you want to talk about because people say LeBron has never done anything. He's Jesus's cousin essentially. I find it, and I'm not gonna say he ever did this. I don't know, but in respect to what Rex was saying with the Tiger Woods versus Michael Jordan, with things getting out, to me, I think LeBron James is like you were saying, Nick, very well manufactured of his public appearance. So I I would not be surprised if he had done questionable things, or if not just generally immoral or unethical, whatever. And I'm not saying he did. I don't know. To the point of it is though, is that I think in respect to the influence of the game and Mike, I don't think people thought that they could be like Mike. I don't, because Mike was going around and just doing monster dunks. He was the guy. I think what made him more attractive per se is that he was a likable guy. I felt in comparison to LeBron. I've never thought that LeBron was a likable guy. He seems fake. Uh, Not to say he is. I mean, he's authentic in respect, in my opinion, to wanting to be an amazing basketball player. But some of the things he says, I feel like he just puts fronts on people. I don't think, to me, what I remember about Mike as a kid and looking back on things, I never thought once that he was unauthentic, because even in some of these old interviews, well, what do you think about gambling? He said, well, it's a hobby. I don't have a problem. I just like to gamble. I don't think LeBron would have said that.
Yeah,
I
and
don't.
yeah, and I can't remember who said it, but like kind of maybe a good way to describe LeBron versus Jordan, right? Is, I can't remember if it was Bill Clinton or somebody, but they said it was something. I can't remember if it was him, but it was something along. A lot of people, like, who would you vote for? They think about, would I want to have a beer with this guy, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of somewhere something like that. There's some kind of quote like that, right? And I don't want to have a beer with LeBron. I just got to be honest with you. I just don't think it would be fun. I don't think it would be like an authentic interaction, right? I would love to have a beer with Jordan. I think he'd shoot the shit with you. I think he'd, if he had to have a beer with you, I think you could pry him apart and ask him anything, and he'd probably just give it to you straight. I think he'd laugh a lot more at himself. I feel like I could poke fun at Jordan and he'd just kind of take it, or he'd shoot one back, right? I think like if I did that with LeBron, he'd be like, why are you insulting me? Like kind of like, like that's kind of the difference there, is that I would love to have a beer with Jordan. I think it'd be crazy stories and all kinds of things. I think it'd be fun. I don't think having a beer with LeBron would be very fun. I think he'd kind of be a bump on a log, or like he'd be worrying about how he looks, and it's just that kind of thing. I think that's a good way to explain it.
So Jared K says he doesn't think Jordan is more authentic. Uh, I mean, I think you're agreeing with me with this, but Pierre, are you there? Pierre, can't hear you if you're there. Just keep talking and messing with your audio, and if we start hearing you, we'll cut back to you. Um, so yeah, with so okay, so this is funny. Now I'm not saying that Michael Jordan has never lied in the face of the media. I'm sure he may have, or at least exaggerated things, or at least cattily lied about things sarcastically. Um, but Jared K, you said Wilt Chamberlain is more authentic than Michael Jordan. I'm not saying that because I think both of those guys would have been great to have a beer with in this
Yeah, I think they're both
conversation.
pretty. Yeah,
Um, if I had to pick, I would probably say I'd want to have a beer with Wilt Chamberlain over
me
Michael
too. I was
Jordan.
thinking I probably would pick Wilt Chamberlain over Jordan, to be honest.
But the point of it is that Wilt Chamberlain, you know, I'm not like the 20,000 just is mathematically impossible. I think so.
Hey,
I
I'm
think
not doubting my man. Okay, I'm not doubting my man. I'm pulling for him. I hope the number's real.
I think somebody did the math, and he would have had to have like sex like with 3 different women every day since he was like 8 years old or something like that. For 20,000 to have been there. So in respect to but just to the point of it is that, and I'm not saying I don't think that Wilt was I think he just exaggerated things sometimes just to seem bigger than life. I don't like LeBron has just made like he never I felt like it was and again this might be a little biased because the things that Will Chamberlain would talk about would be would not be about him being so smart per se.
Yeah,
I slept with 20,000 women. I could, and I do believe this is something I think we talked about before, Nick, which I disagree with. And I think Robin said this too. And not to say, that I know better or not, but a lot of people like to say, well, if you're taller or you have longer limbs, you can't bench press heavier weights. That's absolute effing nonsense. You have your body type, enables you to do whatever. So is it easier to, or are you going to finish a bench press faster if you got shorter arms? Sure. However, you still have the same functionality with your arms, unless you have just generally longer limbs. Like per se, most people have an equivalent arm length to their height, give or take a couple inches. Most people don't have it very much more or very much less. The general rule of thumb is that your wingspan, however you want to say it, is the size of your height. The point of it is though is that 500 pounds at 300 plus pounds, the bench press is not crazy. I don't know your experience with lifting weights, but I was able to lift over 300 pounds with never lifting weights before in my life within 4 months. Uh,
I've
so
never benched 315. I got like 275, 285 was the most I ever got.
and I'm 6'4", and at the time I weighed about 200 or 210 pounds. So
That's pretty
to
good.
to think that a 300-pound guy who is a world-class athlete, I'm not, just spoiler alert, I'm not in the NBA or some record-holding track athlete or what have you. So the point of it is that I do not doubt in a heartbeat that he actually lifted 500 pounds because guys like Shaq was lifting 400 plus pounds, even when he was old. So I don't doubt that part. But the 20,000 was just,
That's a bridge too far.
yeah, a little too much. Um, but one more chance if anyone wants to call in. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap it up in a second. Um, but yeah. Oh, Rex says my wife's next door neighbor growing up had his first beer with Wilt. That's pretty
That's
cool.
crazy, dude. If that's true, I mean, I'm sure it's true, but that's nuts.
Yeah. Um, Jordan manipulates a lot of stories, not out of narcissism, but for marketing reasons. Can you give an example, Rex?
I just heard that recent one about him jumping out of a hotel room when his wife showed up and he was with another woman. I don't know how true that is, but that's one I had heard recently.
But did he say that?
No, that someone else said again. So I don't know, but I'll have to look up the story and send it to you.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't think Michael Jordan was a saint. I'm sure he was sleeping around on his wife. I guess they got divorced for that. But on top of it, Rex said the 48-inch vertical, 4.2, 40-yard dash. Yeah,
Will ran track at Kansas, so I mean.
Oh yeah. No, Rex was talking about that with Michael Jordan.
Okay. Yeah, Jordan was clocked by who was it? West? It was somebody for the UNC staff. I can't remember at the time.
But did I know that he is known for that? But did he ever say he did that in an interview? I don't know if he did, but I
Jordan
know
never said. I didn't hear that from Jordan. It was someone else telling the story.
Yeah. So I don't know if he's ever said he had a, and if he did say it, I've never heard him say it. If Michael Jordan ever said he had a 48-inch vertical and ran a 4.2. Now, Wilt definitely would say stuff like that, which I'm not saying he was lying. And I'm not saying Michael Jordan did a 48-inch vertical or had a 4.2 40-yard dash. But to the point is that I don't know if he's ever said it himself. Are you looking that up now, Nick? Or
yeah, I can't find it. I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah, I don't think he. I've never heard of him saying it. Now I get, the moral dilemma of, why not just say no? I never did that in public. But I agree in the respect of why would you say that if people are saying that about you? So, but yeah, somebody ran a 4.2 in the NFL Combine, I think, recently, right? I forget who it was. Somebody ran a 4.2, which I think was the best ever because obviously that's insane.
It's Olympic levels, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a record in the NFL Combine. But since no one is calling in and Pierre is having technical difficulties, we're going to shut it off here.
This was a good stream. It was a good talk.
Yeah, no, it was great. Sadly, it wasn't as popular as I hoped it would be. But
I'm here.
But yeah, it's
now
still.
I can hear him.
You there, Pierre?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh wait, I got you now.
Yes.
Did you have a question for me and Nick? We're still gonna cut it off soon, but do you want to say something or have a question for us before we cut it out here? Hello.
Oh, we lost him again.
Well, I hear the background. Pierre, do you hear us?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I finally got it to work. It only took me 5 hours. Yeah.
Did you? So we were gonna get going soon, but did you have a question for us or a statement you wanted to make before we shut this off? Are you listening to us through the YouTube? Because
I'm listening to you through the YouTube.
Oh, okay. Listen to us through the restream.
Oh, that's the issue. The restream.
Yeah.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I got it straight. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Because I'm not used to this internet thing. Remember, I'm much older than you guys.
I appreciate your I think your compliment earlier saying I guess for me about my knowledge of the NBA, even though I'm a young buck. So, but I appreciate
you do. I'm giving you full compliments. You're excellent. And so is Nick.
Thank you.
Mhm.
But I just miss Rex.
We all
We
do.
need-
I miss his dry humor.
we need Rex to keep us in check here.
Oh yeah, you know it. You know it. Oh, I wanted to talk about Rondo.
Okay.
So what happened with him, right, Dart, is that he posted bail, so he got out right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, he posted bail, he got out right away. But he did go to jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just stupid stuff. You know how these guys are. Just dumb shit.
Mm-hmm.
If I had money, I would never do anything dumb. They wouldn't even hear from me if I had money. You know what I'm saying, Dart? If we had money, we'd be quiet.
Yeah. It's like, why not? It's kind of the whole, like, just pay $20 for an Uber instead of driving home drunk, right? Like, if you have money, just don't do stupid shit.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I just don't get it. Why would Tiger drive? Dart, tell me, why would Tiger drive, Dart? He has $800 million.
Because he was drunk as shit and he thought it was a good decision.
All right.
No, I'm not. But yeah, to your point, yeah,
You
no,
get my point, right?
Yeah,
he
exactly.
he definitely should not have driven. But he was. There's no way he did that. He obviously was not of sound mind. So, but yeah, it was a dumb decision. And especially for him, being who he is,
Right.
he must have been absolutely, because anyone for the most part would have let him go as a police officer, for the most part, unless they had a vendetta against him.
Yeah.
He probably, instead of signing a ticket or a citation, he could have signed an autograph instead. You know what I'm saying? And then gotten away with it. But he must have been so out of mind that you know what I'm saying? But yeah. No, he definitely shouldn't have done it. And to the respect
Yeah.
of what you're saying,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah,
dumb. He should have
definitely.
called somebody. He had the money. He could have called a limousine, shop in the middle of the night, and they would have picked him up. You know what I'm saying? So
You could have called Nick. Nick could have drove him.
Would have loved to.
Hey, Dart, who's this guy, Michael G? He says,
That's actually my
Pierre's-
friend. That's actually my friend from
Pierre's
college.
my hero. What did I do?
I think he was being sarcastic about the audio difficulties.
Oh, let me tell you something. I'm dumb on this shit. I'll admit it. Dart, remember all the times trouble I had with you the other day?
Yeah. It happens, man. I don't know everything about this stuff either. I've just asked questions to people and they've given me the time to explain a lot of things. That's how I've gotten a lot better at it. Otherwise, over the last year, I knew nothing about this stuff, but I just had friends that explained a lot of this stuff to me and took the time to do it.
Hey, Nick, guess
sir.
what happened tonight?
Mavs
LeBron
won?
walked out.
Oh.
Walked out again before the game was over. Because they
Why does
lost.
he do that? That's like he
Because
does
they
that all the
lost,
time.
and he just walks out. He's pitiful with that.
Yeah.
Pitiful. You guys, a lot of these guys make excuses for him. You know what I mean? I come down hard on him because he does dumb stuff, stupid stuff that don't even make sense. Like eating while the game's going on, throwing his water bottle on the court.
Yeah.
Taking shots with, the game is over. They're losing by 12. He's up there taking shots at the end of the game so he can pat stat pad. He's unbelievable. I told Dart we got to get Scap Attack. He's got to get Scap Attack. It's gonna be so good when him and Dart get together. You know what I'm saying, Nick?
I got you. I hear you 100%.
Where did Dart go?
He's right here.
I left the room. I'm coming back now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but But yeah, we've been doing this for 2 hours and 15 minutes. But yeah, no, I
No,
would.
you guys can go ahead. I just wanted to. I was happy I just got in the last second.
Yeah, no, you're good. But yeah, no, I would love Scap Attack to come on. I emailed him; he hasn't answered me yet. If y'all in the chat want to see him on the show on the Sunday show, just harass him. Tell him that he should come on the show.
Oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna tell him he should come on the show. I know I don't know him yet, but
Mhm.
I'll find out a way to get to him somehow.
Yeah, he's got an email listed.
Yeah,
Now, granted, I haven't spammed his email or anything. That's not what I'm going to do. But uh, I think the easiest way is just to hear the same thing over and over again by multiple people. It makes people think that maybe you should do it. So, but yeah,
yeah.
um, but yeah, I guess we're going to shut it off here.
Okay,
Nick,
guys.
Pierre, do you have any last words you want to say to anybody?
Yeah, when
Before
you
we
coming
sign
on
off?
again?
I'm gonna come on tomorrow. TBD. So actually, it was funny because I'd actually mixed up the dates because I'm an idiot of when my movers would come. So they actually ended up coming today. So Saturday and Sunday I'll be free. Um, even though I told everybody I wasn't going to be available on Sunday. So
Uh-huh.
I maybe I should ask everyone else if they're interested, but it's also Easter. So I don't even know if I'm going to do it on Easter because I'll probably be, hunting eggs with my kids or whatever. So,
Right.
but
Do you have a
tomorrow,
time for tomorrow?
uh, I also might be hanging out with my friend. So if I do it, it would be in the early, like the afternoon East Coast time, early afternoon East Coast time. My friend invited me over for a going away thing. So, but I'm not sure yet. I don't know, but I will put it on the website once I figure out, or on YouTube once I figure out if that's still a thing, because I haven't talked to him all week. But yeah,
Yeah.
but if not, it'll be in the evening. If not, so
Yeah. Okay. Too bad. We missed Robin tonight.
yeah, he had I guess he had some family come over or something like that. He was saying so. He had the. I mean, it is Good Friday, so
Yeah, that's
but
true.
but it is what it is. Um, but yeah. But yeah, tomorrow to be determined. I'll be on YouTube, and then yeah, it'll be fun. It'll probably be something. I don't know. I might do the next top 10 player. Maybe LeBron isn't top 20, but I don't know if I can find. I don't know if I can reach that far. I don't. I mean, I personally think he's in the top 10 somewhere. The highest I could have him is top 5, but there's an
Well, you
argument to
saw
be
where
had.
I had him last night.
Yeah,
Remember what I
you had
told you?
him number 6, right?
Yeah, number 6.
Yeah.
Number 6 is good enough for me.
Yeah.
Between 6 and 10, but I gave him number 6. You know.
Absolutely. Nick, do you have any last words for everybody?
No, man, it's getting late. I gotta go take care of some things.
Yep. I want to
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. It was fun. It was a good topic.
Oh yeah, it was interesting. It was a niche topic that I don't think many people talk about. So, uh, if people are interested in this, I think it's probably the one-stop shop for it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it was cool.
Yeah, good discussion, guys. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, because I mostly just listened. So it was a good discussion.
Yeah. And again, I want to thank the chat. I'll probably be on tomorrow sometime. And you all are welcome to call in, Nick. If you're not busy, you're welcome to come too. But yeah, otherwise, Michael Jordan fans are the